I want to introduce Suzanne Davison. Welcome, Suzanne, a clinical hypnotherapist, an LP practitioner, life and business coach. She has helped teenagers, adult, and family navigate their way through trials and tribulation of family, business, and school life. It's such a joy to be with you today, Suzanne. Microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, ladies. Fabulous.
Yes. Let's go. Stripping back the layers.
So thanks, ladies. Fabulous to be here. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to share my screen with you. Let me just get it up so I can share with you. So thank you so much for having me today. So what I'd like to talk about today is we're going to try and understand people a bit more. Like you said, I've been a therapist now for over 10 years, and things that come into my therapy session all the time is a lot of confusion. Very often people come in and they asking me questions like, why would that person do that? Why do I behave this way? Why do I feel this way? What have I done to upset people? And I often say we're in a world full of people, and it's the most confusing thing because we kind of think people should be like us. And when they're not like us, we get very confused, and often we can take it personally and it can end up damaging our self-esteem, our self-worth. So what I want us to be able to do today in this short time that I have is I'd like to be able to give you as much knowledge as I can to kind of looking at the different types of people that we have out there. And what I say is we're made up of 3 layers. So every human being, we're made up of the layer of the outer layer, the experiences that we've been through in life. And that can be from the moment that we stepped into this world. What did we actually experience? When we strip that layer back, we find a layer of what did we learn from our environment when we were growing up. And that will be our parents, school, extended family, culture, religion. But when we strip that layer back to the layer that we learn, we get this layer of actually who were we born? What are our internal drivers? What's the thing that's most important to us as a human being? But most importantly, sometimes what are the things that then cause us stress? What are the things that we might find quite difficult? And this comes into how does our brain process information? How do we interpret what happens in the world? So I'd like us to look at layer 1 today. I'd love to be able to go through all 3 with everybody, but obviously not having the time. So this is the crucial one for me. So what I want to look at is, who are you? Yeah, so let's have a look and see if we can strip back some layers quite quickly today and find out who you are. And most importantly, if I can give you this information that you can take away, and perhaps it means that we don't take life so personally because we can understand other people's behavior. So my analogy is, if we imagine the world to be like a great big shape sorter, and each one of us is a shape trying to find where do we feel comfortable, where do we fit in, who do we fit in with, you know, what environment's right for us. You know, if I'm a triangle, what triangle environments are out there that actually make me feel comfortable and I'm allowed to sort of tap into my brilliance rather than being in an environment that doesn't quite fit me or a person. So let's see. Now, there's lots of different personality profiles out there, especially in business and obviously for business women. But this is a very simplistic version. And I've made it simple so I can teach it to children, because often with children, they find other children very confusing. They perhaps find themselves confusing. So I've got it at a very simple level so that even kids can kind of understand that we're all different. But the 4 key profiles. So I've gone along the theory of we're all shapes. So we have a heart that's very much about keeping people happy. They don't like it when people don't like them. So their avoidance is we people please. We're going to go into a little bit deeper level of all of them. Then we have a square. They like everything to be right and they struggle when things are wrong. So they love some routine and organisation. We have the diamonds, who are all seeking pleasure. They like to have fun. They like stimulus. They struggle a lot with boredom. And then we have the circles, and they're very driven by a sense of achievement, whether that be academic, financial, goals, but they're driven more by results than relationships. And their fear is losing or failing. So they're exceptionally self-motivated people. So we're going to look at each four, and I'd like you to be able to identify who you are or who you resonate with, and there's probably two. But most importantly, have a look around the people that you surround yourself with, and whether that's a partner or your own children, and be able to identify perhaps what profile they are, and even identify perhaps some of the issues that we may have because we're not perhaps compatible as what we'd like to be because they are a different shape to us. So we're going to have a little delve into the different shapes. So I'd love to know who thinks they're a square, a circle, a diamond. So let's look at the heart. See if this resonates with you guys. So this is coming at the, like I said, a very deep layer inside of us. And our absolute driver is keeping people happy. We'll go out of our way to not be disliked. So we've become great listeners. We're loving, caring. We offer support, we're very even-tempered, tactile, patient, loyal, kind, beautiful qualities. And people love to be with this profile because they do spend their lives trying to make everybody else happy rather than perhaps themselves. Now, I say they're a slower paced person. There's two profiles that are slow, two that are quick. I don't mean this is anything like intellectual. It means that these people, their brains like time to process things. They don't like to be pressured by a very high energy environment. They like time to just process and think about things. So people might say they're a bit laid back, easygoing, because they just go at a steadier pace. So beautiful traits, lovely people to be around, but they obviously have their challenges. Now, their fears will be a loss of harmony, change, upsetting people. They don't like arguments. Now, because that's their fear, their challenge is they can be quite sensitive and sometimes overly sensitive. So what can happen is they could take things quite personally. So if somebody was just having a bad day themselves and happened to perhaps snap at somebody that was a heart profile, they might take it quite personally and they instantly want to say to themselves, what did I do to upset that person? Rather than be able to step back and go, actually, I'm just having a bad day. I've not done anything. So they can be oversensitive. They can take their time to make decisions because when they make a decision, rather than it being about what do I want to do, they make their decision based on what do other people want me to do? Will somebody else be happy with that decision that I've made? So they have to play it through a different profile, or sorry, a different set of filters that goes, you know, what would my husband think? What would my children think? What would my colleague think? Rather than just doing what makes them happy. And they will put others before themselves. So when these people walk into my therapy room, they're often exhausted, tired, resentful, because they've been spending most of their time trying to keep everybody happy, and then they realize they're still not happy, and yet they're feeling exhausted by doing that. So they don't like confrontation, which means that they often internalize their stress. So these people would often rather not say something than actually express how they feel. And that way, sometimes we don't know necessarily how the hearts are feeling. They can sometimes mask. So we think they're okay, but underneath it, they're not. So sometimes their stress levels, they don't present as in an anger. They sometimes present in exhaustion. Now, they can be influenced. If you've got a heart around you and they don't want to do something, you could convince them to do it if it made you happy. So they'll often go against what they want to do rather than what somebody else encourages them to do. And like I said, they often blame themselves. You know, like I said, rather than thinking, you know, or somebody else is being, you know, unkind, they would naturally just go, I think I might have done something to offend them. So they're beautiful characters, But my issue with the heart is they don't necessarily treat themselves the way they do other people. So the bit that I'd love hearts to learn are boundaries. They're not great at boundaries. They let people push their boundaries because, like I said, they want to keep them happy. So sometimes they have a problem saying no. So in a business perspective, then what can happen is they can take on too much. If people ask them to do things, they keep saying, yes, 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 I'll do that. They're completely overworked. The other people think they're amazing because they're taking the work away from them. But they're left with like these big piles of work to be doing because they can't say no. You know, they struggle sometimes to speak their truth. So often as clients, if I work with these people, I'm getting them to have the confidence and open up and be able to say, you know, how they feel. They often seek external approval. They look for people to tell them that they're happy. And if the person, like I said, looks like they're not happy with them, then they struggle with that. They're very much externally driven people. We want them to be more assertive, make decisions based on what they want rather than what everybody else wants. Relax if something changes. We don't have to worry about anything. We can move more fluidly with change. To learn how to be comfortable with disagreements. Not everybody's going to love you, and that's okay. But the bit for me is we need the heart to love themselves as much as they love other people. So to look after themselves is a really key area that they need to work on. And like I said, not to take things so personally. So if you have hearts around you, or you are a heart, you may be able to resonate with this. But often when we communicate in our style, in our profile. But when you talk to a heart, it's really important that you keep calm. There's no shouting. You know, you give them time to process what it is that you want them to do. You motivate them by saying to them that you're pleased with them, they've made you happy. You know, they know that you appreciate them. And with a heart, you can encourage them to speak their mind, that whatever they say, you won't be upset with. Often they're scared that if they did speak their mind, then somebody would get angry with them. So you can encourage them to be able to be honest and open, you know, using phrases like, you know, I support you, you're not on your own, you know, it's okay. And it's very much about showing lots of love to a heart. So these are beautiful characters. Like I said, if there's any hearts out there, my biggest driver for them is, you know, love you the way that you love everybody else and put yourself first. So that's one profile. The second one is a square. And these people, they love to be right. They struggle when things are wrong. Now, I don't mean that they're opinionated or it's a negative. They like things to be right. So what happens is they like to have processes in place so they know they get things right. So as an example, a wonderful job for this particular profile would be somebody perhaps in like an accountancy, the finance side of things, because they follow a process, they know they're going to get things right. If you put them in an environment which is very quick paced, no processes, by the seat of your pants, use your initiative, that can be quite stressful because their mind says, how do I know I'm going to get things right? And it can overwhelm them. So they're slightly more cautious, stable, methodical people. If they make a decision, they like lots of data and they like to do lots of research to make sure that they make the right decision. So they will question because they want to make sure they get it right. They have an attention to detail, slight perfectionism in there sometimes, if I'm honest. And again, they can be slow decision makers because they like time to make sure that they're going to make the right decision. Slightly different to the hearts, although I do think that the square and heart can sometimes be the same person, just a different version of them. Because if I'm worried about getting something wrong, often it means I'm worried that somebody will be upset with me if I get it wrong. So this person can sometimes have two sides to them. But they love structure, they love routine, and when they don't have it, they can feel very wobbly, which is why if I'm honest, with the whole COVID situation, this particular profile have struggled more than others because it's been so uncertain and it's chopped and changed around a lot, and we've not quite known what was the right thing to do over the last year. So these guys have had quite a lot of anxiety. So, of course, the fears of getting things wrong, loss of control, not knowing what's coming. They are overthinkers. In the world, we're either an overthinker or a bit of an underthinker. So we either think too much or we don't think enough. And their struggle sometimes, especially in business, can be to delegate, because their theory would be, if you want something done properly, do it yourself. So if they were to delegate to somebody, how do they know they could trust that person to do it as well as they could? So again, often that little bit of perfectionism will creep in, which means it's hard for them to let go. So they do have a sense of control, not of people, of the environment. They like to know that everything's safe and that everything's right. If they think that they're right, they can be slightly stubborn, in terms of it will take a lot of convincing to make them feel that they're not right if they truly believe it. So these guys are very internally driven. The hearts could be convinced it was their fault and they could blame themselves. The squares, if they thought they were right, they will fight for that because they have a deep sense of right and wrong. So they are overthinkers, which means they can go through the what if scenarios. What if that happens? What if this happens? What if that happens? So sometimes it's very difficult for them to come out of the overthinking part of their brain, especially when it comes to making decisions. So they can get overwhelmed, and they like things to be very black and white. If you're going to talk to them, talk to me very clearly so I understand what your expectation is, so I know I can get it right for you. They can be very detailed focused, sometimes can't quite see a bigger picture because they like to know the steps, they like to know the process, what's the structure, and how do we get to the outcome. And often that can lead to quite a lot of anxiety and worry for this profile, because life isn't like that. Life doesn't go right all the time, and things can change quite quickly. Like I said, this last year, I think we've all gone through a crazy year of where things have been changing constantly. And like I said, that's quite challenging for them because their brain likes to know exactly what's happening to feel comfortable. So they can have more stress. So for me, what they need to learn is just trust that their decision, trust themselves. They don't have to overthink, to go more with their intuition. To become more flexible with change, to learn that actually, they can trust that they will be okay, even if they can't quite see exactly how it's going to happen. A very good stress management toolbox, because these guys can get a little bit more stressy than other profiles, and learning how to come out of overwhelm. So if the brain's starting to feel overwhelmed, there's too much going on, to have tools in your toolbox that get you out of an overwhelmed state quickly, and to actually just hand over control. And people say hand it over to a higher power that goes, you know what, I can't control everything, and I'm going to focus on the things that I can do something with and let go of the stuff that I can't. I make it sound easy. I know for people this profile, that takes a little bit of work and a little bit of reprogramming. But if you have any squares around you, children, husbands, wives, friends, parents, a really good way to help them not feel so stressy is to really explain to them what the plan is. So I have a daughter that's a square, and if we're going out, I know that I need to tell her exactly what's going to happen. So she knows what time to get ready, when to put her eyelashes on, when to put her lipstick on, when to blow dry her hair. So she can create a plan based on the plan that I have. And I don't change the plan unless it can really be helped. So she likes to be spoken to very clearly. They like to have a timetable, and they love rules. These, squares will stick to rules. Like I said, my daughter was no way was she not going to conform to whatever rule was stated about COVID. She would follow it to the T because she knew she had to do the right thing. So giving children or giving people rules actually really helps for them. And also, like I said, giving them time to process and make decisions. When you rush them, the brain goes into a bit of an overwhelm because they need to know what the plan is. So they need to have time to work out what the plan is inside of their mind. So my advice to anybody that's a square or has a square around them is, you know, to just appreciate the fact that they just need a bit more time. They just need time to process. So that's my squares. My diamonds are a quicker energy. So this is where their brains work fast. They crave stimulus. They like fun. They don't cope well with boredom. These guys struggled with lockdown because it was boring. And what I realised with the squares, I had a lot of anxiety. With the diamonds, they had a bit of depression because they couldn't do anything to create that stimulation. They couldn't go anywhere to have that fun. And life became boring, which to this particular profile actually is depressing. Because they're very externally driven. So they like to be around people. They like to be places that intellectually stimulate them. So super sociable, enthusiastic, friendly, optimistic, you know, great people to be around. And they create a fabulous environment. So if you work with these people, you know, they will be the ones that are making you laugh, positive thinking, they'll be picking your spirits up, but they do also have their challenges. And the challenges that they are also very distractible. So they will start something, a task that might be a bit boring, and then something else more interesting will come along, and suddenly they're distracted away from the task that they wanted to do, and they're having a chat in the kitchen and a coffee because there was a bit of drama in the office. They would find that incredibly difficult to not get distracted. So if they're doing boring tasks, it's the challenge for them is to stay on task. So what can happen is they can start something but not finish it. They can avoid the things that are boring, and they can then mount up, which can create stress. These guys are very impulsive, so they don't think about decisions. It's very much in the moment. So these are a salesperson's dream, because if they can make something sound exciting and fun, that they will buy it in a second, and then 3 days later they're going to go, why did I do that? I can't afford it. So these ones, if you can sell a good make something sound exciting enough, they probably can't resist that impulse to have that stimulus. So to concentrate and focus is hard. Poor short-term memory. They can be quite forgetful. Like I said, impulsive decision makers. They don't think it through. Sometimes they can have so many ideas. They're very creative thinkers that they don't ground their ideas. It's like, oh, we could do that, we could do this, oh my gosh, I could do that, now I can do this. And then by the time they've actually thought about it, it's got a bit boring to them, because then comes the bit about, well, how do we actually execute it? So can struggle a little bit with time management. And if there's a last minute to do something, they tend to put it off to the last minute. It's either it needs to be done now, or it doesn't need to be done now. So they're not as good at planning as, say, the squares are. The squares can plan for things tomorrow, the next day, the next week. These guys are like, well, should I do it now? And if I don't, then I'll wait until the last minute, until it needs to be done. But very, very like fun guys. So in that toolbox, they need to have really good time management skills, learning how to stay focused on task, organisation, think things through before they make a decision. Now, I'm a diamond, and I'll always say my best one that I did is I took my 2 daughters out, and they were both having a bit of a tough time, and life was just not going to plan. So I took them out and we bought a horse. Now, anyone out there that has a horse, I know nothing about horses. I've never had a horse, I know nothing, but thought it would be fun to buy a horse. Now, that is a decision that I did not think through. 3 years later, when I'm having to go to the yard and muck it out twice a day, I wish I may have thought that decision through a little bit clearer. But everyone had a lot of fun when we had this horse. So for me, what I've had to do is I've had to just take my time and slow down about making big decisions. So I'm less impulsive now. So the final one in our shape sorter. Oh, sorry, if you're communicating with diamonds. So again, if you've got children or staff, I mean, this is big. I do a lot of work with this in business about how do you engage with your staff strategically, is be enthusiastic. If you want a diamond to be engaged in a conversation, you have to keep the energy levels high. You can be animated, expressive, but I would always make sure that they've understood what you say, because you may not know if their brains were darting off and thinking about something else while you were talking. So sometimes they may look like they're listening, but not always listening, because their brains can take them off into something else. So I would always get some validation that they've heard what you've said, and try and not give them too much to do at one time, because they will find the thing that they want to do, and then they'll do that, and other bits will get left behind. So they're always seeking what's the most interesting thing for their brain to do. And they don't tend to write lots of things down because they like to talk a lot. So they tend to talk more rather than write, hence why you can see that I'm a diamond. So that's how you communicate. So the last one, just to give you an idea, is a circle. Now, these, again, very quick-paced people, and they're very driven by success. So they want achievement, and that can either come through financial, academic, goals. So I'd say these guys are more result-driven than relationship-driven. So their fear of losing or their fear of failure can be so high that they put a lot of pressure on themselves. So super, super, super motivated, very driven by goals, action takers, great leaders, very, very competitive. They will not play a game of tennis just for fun. They will want to beat you, and they will want to win. But they are good negotiators. It's very much what's in it for them. So if they have no problem calling somebody out and saying, can you do it cheaper? They are looking very much they take risks, but they sometimes come across a little bit too blunt. So they're very comfortable with confrontation. Sometimes it can actually cause them a problem because they can lack empathy, because what they want to do, where they're so results driven, they may upset somebody along the way, because they don't have the empathy that goes, I wonder how somebody else feels. They're just very driven by their own success. So sometimes can come across a bit rude, a bit too blunt. They're impatient. So if you're working with these guys, you'd need to get to the point very, very quickly, or they're going to get impatient with you. So they can sometimes be a bit insensitive. So often I work with these guys. They're very, very successful entrepreneurs, and financially they're very successful, but they've gone through often a lot of relationship issues because that's not been an area that they focus on, because they like the result. They like to see their success. They like that data. And these guys can be a little bit more feisty. They tend to externalize their stress rather than internalize. So these guys sometimes don't know when to slow down, massively high expectation of themselves, and they kind of put that on others as well. So not always the easiest of people to be around. And the things that we'd like them to learn are to listen, to see things from other people's perspective. Don't just tell somebody to do something, actually ask them how they feel about doing it. Learn stress management, because they can be quite stressful. Patience, be considerate, and actually open them up to the world of doing things for fun rather than having to win. Getting them to enjoy life a little bit more and take some of the pressure off. So these guys like to be spoken to very straightforward, to the point, direct, no waffle. The less amount of words, the better. Very black and white. They need to know what's in it for them. So if you want these guys to make you dinner, what's in it for them to make you dinner? And again, it's kind of getting them to sort of see it from your point of view. So sometimes these guys are a little bit challenging to be around, not because they're bad people, but they're just not relationship focused like perhaps some of the other profiles. So just really quickly, because I know that I'm running out of time here, but where these problems show up is in relationships. So I'm going to show you very quickly. If you had a heart and you had a circle, that actually is a relationship that you're going to have a strong character that could control the heart. That could cause issues. If you had a square and a circle, that's a very clashy personality type, because they like to be right and they like to win. Hearts and diamonds are pretty flexible people, so they tend to just be wanting to make people happy or having a good time. But my bit shows up is in, if you have children of different profiles, sometimes they're confusing and we want them to be like us. Even in your own sort of like in your business, when you're managing staff, if you don't talk to people sometimes in the way that their brain processes, it's very hard for them to understand what's actually expected of them. So again, if you're quite a quick paced person and your staff are slower, it could stress them out because you're going too fast for them, or vice versa. So these problems can show up because we think people are like us, and sometimes they're not. And doing it like this, you can kind of just get a sense of, if this is a profile that we're born with, and if we can understand that these drivers, that the best we can do is, we can't change somebody, but we can understand them. We can make adjustments for them. We can slow down if they need us to. We can communicate differently to them if it makes them feel happy. Because at the end of the day, they are who they are. And that's for me where we kind of just want to celebrate the fact, if you're a square, be square. Don't try and be anything else. Be a great square. If you're a diamond, celebrate being a diamond, because that's who you are at your inner core. Now, obviously, like I said, there's 2 more layers. I haven't got time to obviously go through them all with you today. So that was just a starting point. But if nothing else, I'd like you to be able to just perhaps look at yourself and think, what do I need to learn to make that profile less stressful for me? Perhaps I put too much pressure on myself. Perhaps I'm in an environment that's too quick for me. Perhaps I'm in a relationship where the expectation isn't right on me, or I don't give the right expectation to my children or my partner. So that's kind of me for today. So I hope I haven't gone over too much, Olga. I don't think I could talk much quicker. So I hope that I managed to get through everything that I could. And thank you very much for letting me share that little bit of knowledge. And hopefully you could take something useful away from that today.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. That was very, very not only informative, if you went to the details, and we know all that we're so similar, but at the same time, we're so unique. So our job is how to make the best of ourselves every day.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being with us.
And thank you. And thank you very much for having me, ladies. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you. I'll see you a little bit later.